Shoot, man, we here. It is November the 12th.
Yes. Yes.
2024. We are the Stay Tuned Podcast. I am your host with the most, Jony Currian. Get at me because my name is indeed my name. That's why I fucking refer to myself as that.
Damn. Hola, hello, konnichiwa. I'm Nathaniel Cole Jackson, the Hokage, the Village Hidden Elise, the Commander of Scout Regiment, the King of the Pirates, Commissioner of CCG, Principal of the Hero Academy, Captain Commander of the GOAT, Tier 13, Leader of the Hishin Unit, and General of the Red Ribbon Army, Kakashi Hatake, Jiraiya Sensei, Vincent Sanji, Odin Sama, and Trump is president.
What's good? It's young Sterling Mitchell. I forgot all my nicknames, so I'm just young Sterlz these days. You feel me?
You know, sometimes your name can be good enough. It's called a brand.
My mom tried to tell me what once, and I never listened to her.
It'd be like that though.
I always want my shit to be different. I always want my shit to be some fly shit. For the first 2 years of elementary school, I kept telling niggas my name, or my teachers, that my name was Toshi, because I was a background character from a Pokemon game I was playing, and I liked that name.
Toshi.
That's a good name.
What did Toshi do?
Also,
I thought it was. Nah, he was the gym leader on the very first gym, and he had all the bird niggas on him. He was a nigga with a Pidgeotto.
Okay.
I forgot. I think it was Pokemon Gold or something like that. But he was nice with it. Oh boy had the spiky blue hair like he was Super Saiyan God.
goated.
I was like, I want to be like Toshi.
Bro, that game was goated. That's my favorite Pokemon. Yo, Silver and Gold.
That's the best.
Yeah, because you get 2 games, bro. They gave you all of blue and you get a whole new game. And they're connected.
Niggas don't talk about that. They made so many Pokemon games after that, but they never touched the peakness of Gold and Silver. Because, like Johnny said, you beat the whole region, and like, yo, you nice. We want to run it up over there, and we go back and go right through the fucking yellow and blue and all the original shits. It's come on, man. You ever seen a nigga with 16 badges?
Let's get into this. I love that game so much because the second you cross lines, like on some real like LA turf war shit, I had never experienced such racism in my life as a child. And they were like, "Oh, you that Johto champion? Yeah, you ain't shit. You washed. You ain't gonna do shit over here." You step into Ash Ketchum's like peaceful homeland, wholesome farm village.
Out of town, it didn't matter.
Every single one of them motherfuckers in them 3 houses is talking shit. You from Johto, bro? You ain't gonna do shit over here, bro.
Only to get smoked. Because, nigga, I obviously beat the Elite Four over there. And you got fucking level 8 Rattata. Why are you talking shit like that?
Yeah.
But that's also the only time in my entire life that I've seen something actually literally be on site.
Yes.
If I see you, we're scrapping.
Damn, it really was like that.
Man.
I didn't even realize.
Literally, if I see you, it's exclamation point over my head. It's not a question mark on me. Exclamation point, it's on. I'm sprinting to you.
Even if I'm at the top of a mountain, bro. You remember where you got a
Nah, see.
like very end game where after you done beating all the Johto gym leaders and the Kanto gym leaders, they're like, yeah, the original Pokemon champion, he up on that mountain. And then you gotta go fight.
Why was that nigga up there, though? That nigga was just up there chilling.
New Alpha, bro, just emitting aura for regions. Like,
Nigga, go home.
yeah, bro. How are you not catching hypothermia, bro? I had a Charizard, motherfucker. Don't ask
That
questions.
nigga was up there for no reason. You just gonna battle me. You could battle me down in the grass. Yeah, we was not supposed to start this talking about Pokemon, but here we are.
Hey, man, speaking of
I'm mad at it.
site activity, bro, the Democrats and the Republicans, it's been 4 years of building up to it being on site, and damn it, it seems like we're gonna have 4 more. This shit is crazy, man, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Nate, I don't feel like we played a role in all of this apocalyptic behavior, bro.
Define we.
Yeah, I wanted you to explain this.
I had a chance to barely, not really, at a very small minor amount, play God in politics for a little bit, and motherfucker, I got burnt. But I also feel like the process itself was so fucked up that they didn't let the smart motherfuckers in until it was too late. Gentlemen, let's get into it. In August, when we recorded that podcast, the writing had been on the wall for Joe Biden, and the DNC had started really never fundraising because they thought they were going to run Joe Biden until Nate and me recorded that podcast, or really around that time. And
That's a fact.
they reached out to me and they were like,
Oh, shit.
in typical crackhead format, the DNC came to me and was seeking some libtard copium. It was like, you know,
Yeah.
I felt like I was the main character from Snowfall for a second. I was like, all right, I'm gonna give you dollars. I'm gonna bleep that out. We don't know.
A disclosed number.
Like a Babylonian prostitute, the DNC spread their ass open to the point where I was like, oh God, I do not want to see that deep behind the scenes. Like, I do not want to see behind your scenes like that. Gentlemen, they informed me, like quite early on, they had an internal poll, and now I can talk about this because all of this has actually been reported. Like, there's actual cited sources that we could refer to about this. Literally, Nate, at that time, they told me that Biden had an internal polling against Trump that showed Trump getting over 400, maybe 414.
God damn.
Electorate college.
That's
so
goddamn all of them.
Yeah, and despite
that's like flip California shit.
Yeah, and despite that, they were still going into the media and being like, "Nah, he's our candidate" and all that stuff. But then privately, they started like just asking for money out of nowhere. So I was like, "All right, I've always been talking about buying a politician. I actually have some fuck around money right now. Let's find out." Give him a little bit, and this is exactly what happened. Like the DNC was extraordinarily split during this time, and that's of course the godmother, Nancy Pelosi, and Barack. What both of them wanted to do was get Joe Biden out earlier. They were trying to get rid of him in August, but his administration was just like, no, we're gonna run him. It is what it is. Y'all got to deal with that. So Obama and Nancy Pelosi wanted to run an open primary starting in August, leading up into the actual DNC official nomination process, right, for the president.
Which should have.
Yeah, the Biden administration out of embarrassment for stepping down, but then also very actively, Kamala was trying to, in typical House of Cards, like political chess match, like she wanted the presidency, right? So it really split the DNC. Like the DNC currently is actually really split. This is like not a unified party at all, which we always kind of knew behind the scenes given how incompetent the Biden administration has been for the past 4 years and a lot of stuff. But ineffective. It's incompetency due to inefficacy. It's literally incompetency because of too many cooks in the kitchen. And, Harris is a big part of that administration too. So from Harris's and Biden's interest, there was one side that was like, no, we're just going to, if we have to hand it off, like I don't want to hand it off. I'm going to wait until the last moment. And I don't know what caused this shift to be decided to go down this route, but they said, we're going to run Biden to the last moment until we get forced out, and then after that it's just going to directly go to Kamala. Their argument was that we don't want to look like we're rigging an election, and there's technically precedents for when another president in the past has gotten sick. I forgot which president this was, so I'm sure y'all could do the research on this, but there has been precedents before that there have been former presidents that have gotten sick, and then the vice president has taken on their campaign to run on it. And of course, Kamala, like all politicians would be like, yeah, fuck yeah, I want to be the president. What do you mean? But originally, Barack and Nancy wanted to run an open primary with pretty much all the people who got talked about for VP. They were all going to be the people running for the presidency, which was really interesting. And then once that got shut down, Barack was actually really, really hard about saying, I want Mark Kelly. I do not want Kamala. Obama did not want Kamala at all, which didn't make any sense to me because I was like, I think she would be better than some guy that nobody knows about. But Mark Kelly is actually a senator from Arizona, former NASA astronaut, entrepreneur as well, and then, moved to Arizona. And from what I've heard, has been pretty good senator. I mean, if you talk to people who've lived in Arizona, they've said positive things. So yeah, Barack wanted him specifically. And Nancy just wanted an open primary, straight up. So Nate, going back to you and me, the stuff that we talked about in the podcast is stuff I directly gave the DNC, bro. And I fucking hate the DNC for waiting too late to actually give a shit about what people, their constituents who would probably vote or support for them, or even their own donor base. Yeah. I recommended, hey, instead of chasing, far left, try to be the centrist in this. And I actually now look back in retrospect and realize, oh, Jesus Christ, that was the wrong thing for Kamala specifically to do. Because, I feel like Kamala can't really sell either. You can't really be far left, but it would be easier for her to probably be considered as, a centrist, more like Biden. But her version of centrism was just becoming a neocon, which I didn't anticipate when I gave that information. So it's, weird. I feel conflicted because it's, I know the information that we were thinking of was, valid, but the way they took that, misexecuted with that, and, asked at the last moment, kind of really has me fucked up, in a lot of ways, because I feel just simply took the 4-year process to ask the average American citizen of what they would ideally want from a candidate. They've actually been quite vocal about this, and you rejected a DNC primary run against Biden. There was no primaries that happened in the 2023 period, right? There was a guy named Dean Phillips, actually, who's a great House of Representatives member, went on the Joe Rogan podcast. So he has a Joe Rogan episode. I recommend y'all to go watch that. He's also been on the All In podcast. He ran the whole gauntlet from Fox News onwards to platform, liberal, conservative, even podcast bros. He literally ran through the gauntlet, which is something that Kamala never fucking did, by the way. He did all of that and was literally ringing the alarms in 2023, September of 2023, actually, to be hey, this guy is too old to actually run a second term, definitely going to lose to Trump. We need to get somebody else in there. And the DNC shat on him. Go watch the podcast episodes that he was interviewed on. Like, word for word, he knew this was coming a year ago. And the DNC shut that down, mainly because the Biden administration had so much control over that time. So it's like, whatever Biden really wanted to do, like, that's what was going to happen. And I think he, in his own heart, felt like he was healthy enough to run for a second term. We all know that. Like, some point in time, it's really tough. You got to take the keys away from grandpa. And so, like, unfortunately, we had to watch that in a presidency case. And these are the results. I don't think we've ever seen a red sweep in our whole lifetime.
Yeah, I think was a big part of the Democrats' kind of disconnect with part of their campaign strategy. There was a huge change in Trump's general rhetoric from the first presidency to the second one. There was a humongous change, actually.
And you look at his cabinet, he has been filling in neocon liberals, like people who are going to keep the war machine and like Israel going in. And that's been a little sad because I know he really was trying to sell like, hey, you know, it's Kamala that's trying to push the wars because AIPAC is like literally arm up their asses, working them like a sock puppet right now, which is 100% true. The one thing Democrats can't ever fucking say is that the Israel-Palestine war did not play a factor in this election, and like they even remotely gave a fuck about Palestinians. Like this was like, yo, we will be Bibi's bitch. Like whatever Ben Gvir or whatever, you know, whatever those guys are saying on that side, whatever Israeli supremacist, Israeli fascist bullshit you want to push over, if you don't like certain Jews over here, like, we'll beat up your Jews for you. Like, we'll send cops over to colleges to beat up your Jews for you if they're protest against. And throughout that, they were like, no, it's not a non-factor. You can't possibly say Trump is going to be worse. And I'm like, it seems like Dearborn, Michigan, a place that was in a battleground state that is 70% Muslim, would beg to fucking differ.
Right.
It's not like it was just, a bunch of white conservative men turned out and swung the election. Every demographic, literally every demographic, right, this election. At the point that you're at right now, DNC, you have to stop looking at the mirror and like make this race or identity politics, because you keep making this narrative that, if you're a minority and you don't vote blue, we're gonna just say you're a coon. We're just gonna dismiss you.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna just put you in this corner.
There's a huge spotlight that needs to be shown on that, because you made a point earlier, Johnny, about the DNC's strategy around Kamala presenting herself as more centrist, turning out to be the wrong decision. I don't think that necessarily is true. I just think it's significantly too late because the strategy of the DNC, or the left in general, not even necessarily politicians, but people who speak for the left for the past maybe like 10 years of the identity politics and you're not good enough to be considered one of us thing that the Democrats have been doing for the past like 15 fucking years.
Right.
And what that's done to the culture war between the right and the left, because the right has won the culture war by a landslide. And then it went way before this election. The Democrats, no matter what was going to happen, no matter who they put up, I think they would have lost. And they lost before this election even happened. And they did it by doing that same finger pointing shit, and they handed over the center to the right. Nobody knows what centrist looks like on the left anymore, because the centrists don't exist on the left anymore. All the centrists are considered right wing now because of the whole finger pointing shit they did. And the specific main person that you can look at as a microcosm of this whole thing is Joe Rogan.
There we go.
If you talk to somebody right now in 2024, they'll tell you Joe Rogan is a right-wing podcast. And that's never been true. Actually, if anything, he's always been a left-wing podcast. But the real reality of the thing is Joe Rogan is the voice of the center. His podcast with Trump got fucking, I think now, just on YouTube, it's like 63 million views. Nigga, that's most of them. That's a huge part of America. That's more than most states.
And that's with YouTube and like the government media related state, you know, the powers that be, I say suppressing that.
The big part of suppressing things, and that's coming from the left, it happened during 2020, and they suppress things by making them radioactive, by attaching them to things that they've deemed as the wrong thing to be. Which during 2020, that thing was Trump, that thing was the right, that thing was the term racist, transphobic, any reason to point to somebody and say, dog, you're not good enough to be considered one of us. And they did that until what's considered one of us is the smallest minute things. where like now you're looking up, it's like the only people who are able to call themselves true left voters are Pacific Islanders who are transgender and also fucking used to be black but they consider themselves Asian, but they continue to narrow down who's good enough to sit at their table, where now the fucking center is at the other table.
Right.
That's why everybody's right wing now.
Mm-hmm.
They just handed them to them on the right. And on the flip side of things, what the right did for the past 10 years was fucking genius. They said, yo, you're calling these people not good enough. You're calling fucking the Nook Boys and Joe Rogan and all these big platforms racist and not good enough to be on the left. Yo, we'll take them, and all their fans too, because dog, we're watching them for a reason. A lot of people identify with the views that Rogan have, or the views that all these people have, and you're telling every single one of them that they're not good enough to be for you. Why would we vote for you?
Bingo, dude.
We are the center. They gave them to the left, they gave them to the right, and then they're looking at like, well, why can't we identify with the fucking center anymore?
It's just a blame game.
Yeah,
and
man.
That shit just pissed me off so much. About like, it's like the whole thing. Even when Joe Biden was running, like that whole comment he made is like, "You're not black if you don't vote for me." Like that.
Yes.
Yeah, that never sat right with me. It's like you can't tell a black man that like white man can't tell me I'm not black for not voting for him. Like that's just stupid. Like what are you doing?
Right.
Like they've been setting this stuff up for a while.
Meanwhile, they never gave a single reason for black people to vote for you. They never said why you should vote for you. They said who you are if you don't.
And then it's like in this election, like he was saying, like all their ads and stuff was just like trying to make you feel bad. Like it's basically like if you don't vote for the Democrats, you don't like women or some shit like that. It's like wait, hold on. What are you supposed to be telling me like what you can do for us? Like what? Like you're not supposed to just make me feel bad and if all your shit, you just putting us down. And I think, yeah, like you guys said, the American people rebelled against that this year. Like they was like, no, you can't identify me. Like I identify myself.
And that's super stupid because you should have already learned this from 2016. They ran so much shit on Trump as a bad person, and people who vote for Trump are bad people, and they put all their chips on that when they already lost doing that exact same thing in 2016. We all know who Trump is, and we voted him already.
Bruh.
Why would you think that'll work now? We know all these things already and still voted for him.
I know, dude.
It makes no sense. It makes no logical sense. I don't see how they think that could be a winning strategy.
The reason why they ran it back was simply out of complacency because they got bailed out in 2020 by COVID.
Big time.
Like looking back at this, like looking back at all of this in retrospect, the past really 8 years, like I'm saying Trump's term and Biden's term, right? And the ascendance of Biden into that seat. Biden, during his primaries, like the DNC forced him in. Bernie led early on.
Yeah.
And so what the DNC decided to do was force everybody from 3rd to 9th place. By the way, Kamala never won a single one of those primaries. She never got into the top 3 in most of those primaries.
Got smoked.
She was
She got smoked because of one girl named Tulsi Gabbard.
Right, bro, put her to bed. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, why does the DNC love running losers? I love Kamala, but I have to be honest with you, like, you can't take somebody who's consistently showed you they're nothing but 4th place and be like, let's put them in the hardest competition and see if they get 1st place.
It makes no sense. And it's not even, at first I thought it was because of lack of stars, which it is a lack of stars, but it's not kind of. Because first of all, they had another star with Bernie Sanders.
Bingo.
They did. He had someone who actually built a real, like, there was actually, that Bernie fever shit was real. He had people actually coming out for Bernie. And I think if they actually put people behind him, I think they can make something out of Beto O'Rourke. And I think they make some out of a few other people too. But like, I don't understand how an institution can be so just fucked from the core up where they can't help but make the losing decision. And that makes me put so much even more respect on the name of Barack Obama, because how the fuck did this superstar actually break through this terrible fucking institution and actually make it? Because they were working, just like Bernie, they were working against Obama big time in the primaries. They wanted Hillary Clinton to win that election.
Yeah, exactly. It was supposed to be her time back then. Do you remember that? Like, they used to always...
Yeah, BET was pushing Hillary over Obama in that primary, big time.
Bro, they don't remember that, bro. Say that again for real, bro. BET was pushing Hillary Clinton.
Black entertainment television.
Remember that, bro. And
Yeah.
the same people used to own UPN and they shut down UPN at the same time. I was like, bro, this is crazy. Like, that happened in like the same 6-month period. Like, UPN went down and literally on BET, the next other thing they owned, they was like, yeah, Hillary. I was like, all right, there's something going on. I was a kid back then, but I was like, something suspect's going on. The people that's supposed to be on our side might not be on our side. Like,
yeah, man. Now that we see how much of us just losers the people who run the left are, looking back at the last like 20 years, literally the DNC since Bill Clinton. They realistically should have lost every single election if it wasn't for the superstar that Barack Obama was.
Oh yeah.
And the stroke of fucking blind luck that COVID and George Floyd gave Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Because you're right, Trump would have won by a landslide if it wasn't for the wild shit that happened in 2020.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden's juxtaposition to Barack Obama, because Joe Biden's kind of a blank slate that they could use on 2020. But nobody's like for Joe Biden. They like Joe Biden because of his proximity to Barack Obama.
Right. Turns out Joe Biden is nothing like Barack Obama. Who would have thought?
Turns out they actually might hate each other. I forgot there was a news story going around somewhere that Jill Biden got in a big ass fight with a lot of people on Obama's cabinet, like super recently. Like they've had that for a while.
But yeah, bro, like that is for sure a thing. And also, Trump is so alpha. Y'all gotta go back and look at the one fucking debate that him and Biden did. Like, I thought he was lying and just pulling this out of his ass, but Trump literally pointed at him and he's like, you know what? He hates her. Like, he hates Kamala Harris. And he was
that's right.
Because he knew they were backstabbing each other the whole time. Like, Joe Biden is happy because he was like, I fucking told y'all she was not gonna have a better chance to be at winning this
Did
thing.
you see Joe Biden put the Trump hat on top of his hat?
I saw that. I saw that. I was like, damn, Joe hates these niggas.
I kind of don't blame him at the same time.
I don't either. He's out.
Everybody backstabbing me, fuck it. I'm gonna have a fun time while I'm here and I'm gonna head out, bro.
And he did want to retire. They brought him back. He wanted to retire after Obama and him. And low-key think the DNC might have threw Joe under the bus a lot too with the way they handled him and Kamala switch out. I don't know for sure that the decision to continue to keep running was on Joe, actually.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Like, this might be the whole plan from the DNC in the first place to get Kamala in, because, you know, she had zero chance of winning the primary, and she might have been one of the more likely Democratic candidates that will actually play ball when she gets in office. And the way to do that might be using Joe, throwing him under the bus and making him the bad guy who stayed in too long to give Kamala a bad chance or whatever the fuck.
Right.
Which sucks for Joe, because this nigga's 78 and wants to chill.
Yeah, bro. He just wants to be Dank Brandon. Just let him go do his thing, man.
Yeah, man. Well, he would have rode off to the sunset so much more loved if they let him chill after his vice presidency than now.
Absolutely. Here's the thing that bothers me, Nate. Even from the time that they got my input from what we discussed to the way they treated Joe Biden, it's like they had these ideas of how it would go bad, that like the DNC would get so paranoid that they would fuck up the execution out of fear of how it would go bad, right? Like, because you can't admit that he's old and senile and then be like, oh no, we're gonna blame all this on Joe Biden. Because if he's old and senile, that means we have a shadow government running, which we did, which means it's y'all's fault. It's the administration's fault.
Right.
It's everybody from the little press conference guys who make up the bullshit excuse about apartheid that's happening in Gaza right now, all the way to the social media person, all of this. These people were definitely executing with expectations and executing under pressure, but we're not executing with logic in a united front. So a bunch of mixed messages happened during Biden's administration that led to just a shitty presidency. Another example of this is like, it would be a good idea for Kamala to, instead of going really, really far left, because Trump and everybody else is already labeling her as far left, to try to just be the voice of reason and like, you know, be essentially like Joe Biden was.
But that's not Joe Biden.
When they heard that, they were like, oh, you want neocon, like warmongering liberal, right? You want Lockheed Martin lobbyist. You want that centrist, right? And like, no.
You want Liz Cheney. You want Liz Cheney's cosign.
I was like, no, Liz Cheney is a Republican. Like, don't give me old school Republican that got their ass wiped by Trump. Because listen, if that was a winning strategy, there would be a Republican party that would be ran by them. But clearly, they got booted out of their own party because they're fucking losers. So why would you, like, when I tell you to go to the center, why would you interpret it as that? As the DNC. It's like you try to even give them a little bit of good advice, and the way they go about executing it, it turns into this shadow government cult, like weird fraternity. We're gonna keep it amongst ourselves, but it doesn't even fucking function properly like that, like a militia or a military or a football team. It's a bunch of like people who are sitting together trying to have like political woke-offs with each other. I'm gonna just say this point blank, period. This election should put this to fucking bed.
Yeah.
Transgender rights and abortion issues don't trump economics.
Identity politics in general should be dead now.
Yeah, even abortion, right? Because, like, man, we always thought Trump was just saying this as an excuse and stuff, but it actually got proven out this election when he got rid of the federal law, which, once again, like, I would have supported and kept. His argument was that it's going to go back to the states. If states want to enshrine it, they definitely will. We saw multiple Republican states enshrine abortion laws, like, in their statehood.
Yeah.
So Like literally nothing can happen now. It's more untouchable than even the federal law, like in a lot of these cases. And when Trump makes a decision and the nightmare situation that you told me was going to happen doesn't necessarily happen, I stop believing you, right? When you label somebody a fascist because they support a certain type of belief, like Joe Rogan, like when you want to label Joe Rogan or Elon directly being a fascist, and then you see them do stuff that doesn't directly correlate with fascism, and maybe once in a while they say something that's actually smart that you believe, it makes you, the person who claimed that they were a fascist, less believable. Yeah. And you compound that.
Exactly. It's so fucking sick. And you don't even have to wait to see if they're wrong. But with things like Joe Rogan, you have people who, there's millions of people who watch every episode of Rogan. Every episode is 4.5 hours long. We know who this nigga actually is. Who are you lying to?
Right.
Who are you trying to gaslight?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing as like it's literally the same thing as getting up there and be like, Yo, what are you talking about? Biden is a spring chicken. He's running around the White House. We see him.
Right.
You've been gaslighting us the whole time. We can see you. Why do you think that you still have the credibility you did when you controlled every aspect of what we saw?
Oh yeah, man.
The times are over. You can't keep acting like the same trick works when you saw it not work when you lost the 2016 election.
Right.
Adjust.
Dude, that's so true.
I have 2 questions for you, Sterlz and Jony. The first is the Democratic Party has to do kind of a complete overhaul. How do they go about salvaging whatever the fuck they can and rebuild like a goddamn failed NBA franchise? And the second, which I want to hear you say, I want to hear your opinions on the second one first, actually. If this Trump presidency goes on to be super prosperous and Trump ends his second term with a positive perception in America, does his run from 2016 to now go down as one of the best presidential stories of all time?
Love these questions.
If he's looked back positively, he's like, yo, at the end of the day, when in 2045, you're gonna look back and it's just, was he a good president? Was he not? If he's looked at as a good president, he came from fucking nothing political wise. Left fielder used to be an apprentice. Yo, there's a problem here. We gotta drain this swamp. Biggest upset in election history, beating Hillary Clinton. Someone who's been propped up to become president for literally decades. Trump came in months and scooped her up. If the Trump presidency now is looked at as positively, I think we're gonna look in hindsight at the 2020 election and say, yo, that nigga might have been right about that being stolen. And if that's looked at as being stolen, yo, they tried to work against him to get him out again, the bad corrupt institution, they stole the election from him, and then they look back at the overall numbers for the Democratic candidacy got each election, both Obama campaigns that he won. I think his overall votes was somewhere around the 70 million mark, maybe a little less than that. And Kamala's was at like 66 million mark, so it's somewhat comparable. But Joe Biden's in 2020 was like 87 million, a humongous jump.
Yeah, he had 15 million more Democratic votes
than Obama. Mm-hmm. And Obama was everybody knows the energy around Obama was way bigger than energy around Joe Biden. Obama was a superstar.
Yeah.
And then like, oh, that's kind of funny. And then now that if Trump's looked at as the good guy in history, that might be looked at as the industry still coming from. And then he came back again and said, fuck it. They came out to me again, Obama, well, I'm gonna take my country back and I'm gonna save this shit. And then they shoot him.
Right.
At a rally. They shoot him at a rally and he gets up from the shot in front of American flag and says, no, fuck it, fight, and puts his fist in the air, and then he wins that election again. Dog, this might be looked at as the best presidential story ever if he's looked at as a good guy through these next 4 years.
Oh yeah. Good or not, I already think he's gonna go down as the most consequential president of our lifetime. I already think simply just his re-election and what people he's putting in for the second term, between his second term's execution and then what he did during the first term, and he really had a 12-year run. Like, yeah, Biden was the president, but because the dude doesn't have their shit together, you can tell a political party, no matter what political party, because by the way, the Republicans were like this 10 years ago, and I'm sure it'll flip-flop again in the future. That's just the way of this country. You can tell a party does not have their shit together when their policies are nothing but a response of the other party. Like, it's not actually rooted in anything, not rooted in actual, this is how we'll execute it, this is why it'll be better. It's just a response to another party. Biden's administration was just simply a response to just Trump. And Trump still controlled the RNC quite easily during 2020 up until this point, right?
Which is crazy. the RNC had a brief moment after January 6th where they did try to distance themselves from Trump and tried to cut that, but he just took that shit right back over without even being president.
Yeah, bro. Straight bully ball, bro.
That's insane to me. That's bully ball. It's crazy what he did.
Here's the thing. You want that from your American president. If we're getting involved in wars, if we have to win trade negotiations with really smart motherfuckers from other countries, yeah, bro, I want that guy. Like, and here's, okay, this is going to lead into the first question that you asked, right? So, okay, who should the DNC go get? If y'all want a good temperature read of what the country's really about, just go talk to the Latinos. They really are, like, in some ways, the most American experience that you could possibly talk to, who decided to take the risk to either get themselves or one of their family members deported on the justification that Trump was a businessman, he's not a politician, and he's gonna do some things that are unconventional to buck the system. How many times, no matter, like, you could interview anybody during this period of time where they were like, how could you look past him saying this really objectively fucked up shit, which Trump does say. Like, there's a lot of fucked up shit. Like, I think Trump is a very cool man. I don't want to come across like, yo, this dude is alpha, he has aura, bro. Like, I'm just mesmerized. Like, I'm trying to be very objective. There are positive and negative factors to these characters. The media portrays nothing but negative, so we try to be objective on this podcast, right?
Yeah.
It is important to have a president that can command a room and can have strategies that have been proven in the past to win. And that has to come from a system outside of politics, because the way that politics works, it's not a meritocracy. Politics is not a meritocracy. Thus, you cannot actually get the best leaders out of that. Because you know how the fucking media is. They're like, hey, do you know Trump's going to do this really fucked up thing to your minority group? Like, they do that to everybody. They walk up to black people, they walk up to everybody, like, and do that shit, right? So they ran this on the Latinos, right? They interview these Latinos and they're like, yo, this fucked up thing's going to happen. How could you be okay with voting for Trump? He's like, yeah, I know that, but I really like that Trump is a businessman. They keep saying that, and the media keeps ignoring that. The DNC keeps looking at the mirror and it's like, let's run Gavin Newsom. That'll teach them. Let me tell you this right fucking now, folks. If they run a single U.S. senator that's been on the spotlight for a long period of time, if they run Gavin fucking Newsom, fucking Shapiro, fucking JB, and once again, going back to what I was saying from before, had they went through the open primary process, Tim Walz probably would have been the nominee for the presidency, and I really do think Tim Walz probably would have beat Trump.
He would have been better than Kamala.
Yeah, he would have done for sure better than Kamala, because his execution, first of all, he was the only motherfucker who campaigned. When Kamala said she campaigned, something that really bothered me, they did the Hillary Clinton thing, except Hillary Clinton just straight up didn't show up to states.
That was so crazy. States she needed.
Yeah.
With a capital N needed.
All the battleground states, right?
Yeah.
Kamala did something where she was like, okay, I don't want to be Hillary Clinton, but how do I do barely more than that and still get the fuck out of here? When she would go to Michigan, she would like fly the plane into Detroit, just be at Detroit, hire some celebrity to be like, Babyface Ray is here, guys. You know what I mean? Because she would be like, abortion fucking matters. And then they would be like, this is enough. This is enough for us to win. Nah, that doesn't matter as much as grocery prices, it turns out, or affordable fucking housing. Maybe lead with that. And then when you're going to a battleground state, show up to the other towns outside of the big city. Kamala couldn't do that. Tim Walz did that. So going back to my original point, they need a businessman. They don't need a politician. If they were to run any politician, it has to be a governor. I wouldn't even recommend that. Like, you got to match Trump, so you should get a businessman in there. Yeah. I feel like a broken record.
Listen to the people. You saw what the people are voting for. Dog, listen, learn from it.
Oh, yeah.
We're not going for these politics. We hate these career politicians.
Exactly.
Vocal. We've been very vocal about that.
If you look at the role of the presidency, it's really more of an entrepreneur role. It's not really like, yes, everything beneath the presidency from all forms of government to rise up to the ranks. It's not a meritocracy. I'll repeat that again. Being successful in politics is not simply a meritocracy, right? So you're not going to get the best leader out of that. But in business and entrepreneurship, it is literally sink or fucking swim. Like, capitalism is going to have to force you to become the best over time, or you will simply not be allowed to play the game. So I believe they need to get a businessman. I would either pitch Mark Cuban or Jamie Dimon. My preference would be Jamie Dimon. Maybe it's because I used to work for him. I know how competent he is, that like from literally everything he does, he inspired me as a CEO, and I sound like such a fucking show for that, and I'm not saying that lightly because I'm very like, I don't know, bro, I'm not like a kiss-ass corporate worker or a straight A student on a roll type of guy. So like when I say that, like that means like I was fucking around in my 9 to 5 and he still somehow would say or motivate me to do things within my organization intrinsically because I was interested on working on the same things that motivated him. And I felt like there was alignment that was productive in my life, the company's life, and also like his vision as well. And I think that's qualities you would want from a presidency.
Yeah.
Furthermore, Sterling said it on a podcast before, but I'll actually give the floor to him on this. You want to tell him what JP Morgan did for the U.S. government during the Gilded Era?
Create the Fed.
Yeah, and bail the U.S. government.
Oh yeah, bailed out the U.S. government. Yeah, I mean, he basically said the government was too stupid to control the money.
And he's right. To this day, I'd rather get the CEO of JP Morgan.
Honestly,
his policies are great. Every single time, if you listen to this guy's interviews and you listen to him talk policy, it is nuanced. He's already understood the implementation of it. You could tell he spends time thinking about being president, but understands he can't get as much shit done right now as he could being the CEO of JP Morgan. And I just hope by the time he gets to retirement, he executes on that. It aligns really well. The second one I said was Mark Cuban, and I actually do think he could potentially make a run more likely. I think it's a big reason behind the scenes why he sold the Mavericks, right? That's why he got out of Shark Tank. I do really look at the timeline, guys, right? Like he sold all of that shit and then he started running with Kamala out of nowhere, right? That's not an accident. That's like planting the seed.
I don't know. I heard he doesn't really want to be the face though.
I saw he said that when he was on Schultz's podcast and said that he doesn't want to.
Yeah, cause all that comes with it, how much they look into you and your family and all that stuff. And I don't know if he wants to really put his kids through that, because that is like for your family's sake, that's a lot to put on somebody.
Yeah, no, I do remember him mentioning that. My theory is his goal was not to run now, but he did mention the age of his kids in that same interview, Sterling, because I think that we saw the same thing. He mentions his kids specifically, right? And see, all good like politicians, even Trump did this too. There's so many interviews of Trump being like, I'd never run for the presidency. 80s, 90s, 2000s. Like they would get him on like the fucking View and ask him this like a decade and a half ago, not too long ago, right? And Trump would say the same shit, right? All good people who are hinting at a presidency want to make it seem like that, but they leave hints to let you know like, nah, I'm actually fucking thinking about this. And the one that Cuban, I think, left during that time was once he mentioned the kids, which makes you think he's completely dismissive about it, he specifically went in and was like, yeah, one of them's 17, one of them's 19, and one of them's 21. You only get them for so many years, and then after that they grow up and they're all on your own, and then who knows what I'll do after that. Bingo.
Yeah.
So he's mentioning like my kids are at a certain age where I want to spend time with them. Once that shit is done, we can talk about this again.
I can see that. I can see that.
Because he makes a good point, right? Like, that's what all really rich... I mean, that's what I realized, too. I would never want to be the president. It's more fun when you're rich to just buy the politicians and just tell them what to do. And that's definitely what Mark Cuban was hinting at. And, like, I agree. Like, I fucking agree. I literally just got, like, a taste of that this election. My return on investment, I feel like, was ass, frankly.
Well, I think that goes to what I was saying before about the rhetoric is drastically different. A lot of Trump's danger through his whole first presidency, it revolved around what he was doing to the country socially. And the rhetoric that he kept hounding on was just sowing so much division in the country and like dangerous in some parts, but that was the bulk of the fear around Trump. And that has changed drastically this go around.
That is something actually that's really good for us to kind of delve into a little bit more, because I mentioned it and it could be really inflammatory on its surface. So like it's important for us to really acknowledge that I am pro-choice personally.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like if we feel strongly about this topic, you need to understand that just simply screaming you have to vote for us because of abortion doesn't communicate jack fucking shit. You want to talk about abortion? Let's get into it. What are your beliefs about abortion? You can't just...
What are you going to do? Yeah.
And just be like, we're right because we screamed a word.
Exactly.
Trump brought a very nuanced policy point to the table, which is crazy because the media spends most of the time saying Trump has no policy substance. Here's an instance where Trump showed up and was like, actually, I am not anti-abortion. He publicly has said this several times. I am not anti-abortion per se. I just felt like it wasn't up for the federal government to enforce that. I wanted the Supreme Court to make a decision. I didn't make the fucking decision. Just ask the Supreme Court to fucking look at this, because there's a lot of states that are talking to me about not being fairly represented and having their rights being overran by this federal law.
That makes sense.
That is nuance, right? Whether you agree with it or not, or whatever the fuck that is nuance.
Yeah.
The Democrats had no counter. They campaigned on no counter. They just screamed, "We love women more than you, abortion."
We saw Trump's nuanced answer to this.
Right.
Which is not even, like I said before, it's not even about his nuanced answer being right or not. You can disagree or agree with it, but you have to disagree or agree with what he actually said.
Right.
Which they're not doing at all. They're just saying, like you said, they're just saying abortion, Trump bad. He had more to say than just that.
Let me add another perspective on to this point. When I say like maybe the DNC makes abortion far too much of a priority, let's actually look at statistics in voting demographics. When you look at the population that wants federal enshrined abortion laws, their number one voting policy, more than economics, any war, like whatever the fuck, they're saying, I don't give a shit about anything else. I will come to vote to you as a single voter issue about this. When you take those specific individuals, they are not representative of a voting populace that would win you an election. I'm just going to name numbers. If I'm talking about abortion, 50% off the bat initially don't give a shit. They're called men. I'm sorry. Like, it's fucked up to say. Like, I am glad that I have been through the experience of life, growing up with great women, kind of understanding their struggles through empathy to help me, and also just like studying science and the physiology and like what doctors are able to do. Like, I have literal family members that are nurses and doctors, and so they tell me the nuances. It's more than abortion. It's about women's health because of funding here, and a doctor can't perform certain life-saving surgeries on you based off of these rights, especially gynecology related. So like women can bleed out and die simply because they're waiting for the state to give them a response if they can operate. I had people come into my life and tell me that shit, so I'm like, okay, I can understand why this is associated with that.
Yeah, but that's part of the problem. You had regular women in your life telling you this,
right?
Not Kamala Harris and the DNC. They communicate English shit.
My point is, we even drill down further to show how fucking niche of this group is. Now let's just get to the women. We found out point blank period, like 50% of them actually are either fine with Trump's stance or might even potentially range to not caring. And you're like, do these women just hate women? That's what all the liberal people on fucking all of these algorithms are saying right now. And once again, I'm like, wow, you guys are gonna lose another election thinking like this. It's not that women hate women, you fucking dummies. It's just that sometimes these certain situations might not necessarily apply to them. For example, if you are a woman who believes in a nuclear family, the topic of abortion is irrelevant to you because you're planning to just be with one man, whether you believe in marriage or not, and still have children, like procreate with one person, raise them. Like, right? There's a population of women who just believe that. That makes abortion is not as relevant as you would think.
You still have all the religious women. A big part of America is Christian.
Exactly, man.
It doesn't consider that an option.
I mean, I'd also just say, there's also that rhetoric going around about basically black women just have to work so hard and they have to do so much, and it's like you're just dropping the ball again. Like, it's just like, it's never a black woman thing. Like, it's not.
It really isn't.
Because she was a black woman that she lost. Like, you guys are just using any excuse that you guys can come up with, and then you blaming it on everybody else, and then you just separating people. Really, that's all they're trying to do. Still.
And even that narrative to me perpetuates racism. Like, Sterling, I'm so glad you said it. It's such like a topic that has not been spoken by really anybody else I've heard.
I saw a video going around after the election of I forgot what the lady's name was. It was someone from Dashwood DNC. I forgot what position she holds. And she put out a video to people on the left saying that she knows that the Thanksgiving holidays and Christmas are coming up, and people might have family members that voted against what they want to vote for and voted against women's rights or trans rights or whatever they want to say. And they said they want to reassure to the people in their base that it's okay to stop talking to someone who might be a close friend or a family member and to cut them out of life because they don't believe in your basic rights and shit like that. And basically literally promoting cutting off your family and friends and shit like that for, which is just, I don't know, man. That made me just lose faith in the DNC kind of forever because they ran a whole campaign line off of how divisive Trump was, and you're telling people to literally cut off family members off of shit that they gaslighted into him in the first place.
That is crazy.
It was insane to me that that's something that you'd want to not let alone think to yourself, but also just to project to everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, like, what happened to having discussions and just be disagreeing with people? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't, like, just because you don't think the same on certain topics doesn't mean that just characterizes you as a bad person.
Yeah.
Right. You need to be able to build an understanding of people who don't think like you. So you actually understand what the fuck's going on in your country.
Right.
And why people voted against what you thought was the obvious right answer. It's not so obvious that what you thought was the right answer because most people didn't vote for them. You need to understand why. Both the left and both the DNC and the people who voted for the left.
We gotta make more effort understanding the why when we disagree with somebody. Like, you can't just be like, hear a couple of keywords and be like, okay, that's different than what I believe, so now I'm just gonna stop listening. And people have done nothing about that. We have to stop that. As like Americans, we're tearing each other apart because the second we disagree, we stop listening. Take time to be empathetic. I actually spend the most time, and I feel like it's a sign of intelligence, to think about what somebody said when they disagreed with you and see where they're coming from. Because if you really are right, you should be able to take their perspective and be able to have a reasonable counter that should reinforce your beliefs. And if you aren't able to do that, then maybe they have something valid to say. And then you can kind of entertain what that looks like, right? And rethink your own perspective, right? That to me is a sign of intelligence. If somebody just believes a certain set of information and knows how to parrot it, that does not make you intelligent.
Yeah.
If you can take an idea and literally have thoughtful discussions where somebody can have a disagreeable or an unconventional thought and it also can have valid space, it's up for you to prove that you're intelligent enough to encompass the validity of their statements into your own perspective and shape something new that is smarter than what you used to believe. There's nothing wrong with changing your opinion because somebody else said something smart. There is nothing wrong with that. So faux pas in politics. But that is indeed a sign of intelligence because you're taking an idea that you originally thought was smart. Somebody else comes to you, whether, you disagree with them or not, or you don't like the way they presented it. If you can have empathy to understand how they got to that point, you might be able to think a smarter thought.
Yeah.
That's a good
100%.
Yeah, that was you worded that beautifully. Like, I used to have this. you just put the trauma back in my life. I used to have this discussion all the time. Just trying to get somebody to explain this. But yeah, like just what you said, it's like I think a lot of it kind of comes down to social media these days because people just get put into like a box because social media just has that algorithm, so it just shows them things that just reinforce their beliefs.
Yeah.
So they just get stuck in some mindset where they just believe,
That's very true.
oh, everybody around me is actually thinking like this, until they meet somebody who doesn't, and then they're like, oh, he's just crazy, or he's just an outlier, he's just the other guys. Like, I don't really mess with him. But they're thinking there's a lot more people who just think like them when really that's not the reality. Like, we're all different. Like, we got, especially in America, we're literally a group of people who came from all different types of places and different backgrounds and things, and just the different lives that we live, from rural places to urban places. Like, we just live a lot of different lives, so people are going to think differently. And like, yeah, like these days people just get stuck into that social media bubble, and they just like get one track minded, and they just like, oh, like, yeah, this is just how the world's supposed to be, and this is how everybody should think. It's like, no, that's just not how it goes. Like, it is not going to lead to the best results when it comes to coming together and like doing the best for the country.
Oh yeah,
that's a humongous point, and I low-key think that's actually the biggest danger of social media, not like the rampant negativity and what people can actually say to other people or anything like that, but that right there that you just spoke on, especially now when the algorithm is fucking strong as hell, where like if you show any inkling that you might be on this side of the fence or this side of the fence, they will only throw you ideas and opinions from that side where you have such a warped perception of what the country is really like because you're forced into this echo chamber. That is super dangerous because now everybody's isolated from what the world really is. And now you have that's a big reason why the country can get so fucking divided in the first place, because everybody's reality is so drastically different, because now we're living in times where so much of people's lives are spent online and social media, and their perspective of the world is online and social media, and they're being showed two completely different worlds, and they think that's what it is. You can't unite a country off of that, and you can't get a mix of opinions to grow your own perspective off of that. Twitter used to be a place where it was like a market of ideas, where you can put what you feel, and niggas can drastically disagree with you, and you can have a whole back and forth conversation where you can actually like learn from a different perspective. You can't now, because now every single app is only preaching to the choir.
Definitely, man. I think there are two really good examples of the point that both of y'all brought up, and we saw it in this election. So the first example that proves both of y'all's point would be how Gen Z voted this election. It was a straight divide by gender, and I feel like this was solely caused because of social media. Let me be specific. Like, let's just look at the white Gen Z demographic that voted this election, right? So 18 to 29, white, if you're white, whether you're educated or not, right? An overwhelming majority of the women voted blue, and they were all on TikTok getting fed that shit, right? And then all of the boys were on Twitter, and they were just getting fed whatever Elon was just shoving down their fucking throats. And so that's why we got the results that we did. The media has been confounded for so long. Like, MSNBC is like fucking exploding right now, being like, how could Gen Z males do this to us and stuff. The only demographics of men that actually voted left this election was millennials, like guys our age, like 30, and I don't know what the cutoff was, 43 or some shit like that. And then boomers, surprisingly. So the boomers used to vote for Trump the most the first two elections. They actually went left this time, and then we did. But literally nobody else did. Everybody else went right. And then Gen X, by far, that had the most red quantity votes. But the biggest shift, of course, was, and this doesn't get discussed enough, they were always blaming the fucking Latin men, which is true, but it's the same amount as Asian men, but it never got discussed in the media. If you look at every single one of the charts, and I recommend y'all to go do this, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever the fuck, wherever you get your news from, go look at the stats and look at the bar graphs. They shoved all the Asians into this mysterious category called other. But if you go look at the rate, the people who voted the most red, like the biggest shift, relative shift, right? That was the Asians. And it's so fucked up. I'm Asian, so like I'm just gonna snitch on this dirty little secret that we've always had in this country. Because you guys and the Mexicans and really even the Japanese and the Chinese early on did all like the work of like even the Irish from before, right? Y'all went through all of this horrible, horrific, traumatic, generationally fucked up, institutionalized like racism. And y'all took all these lumps. By the time that we got here, we could just kind of like coast into this little middle area of whiteness. And this has been growing over time. And like, I don't really give a fuck if I'm letting this secret out the bag. I'm concerned at the trend line personally, right? We're in the house. We're the minority in the house, right? Like y'all been out in the field and we somehow snuck our way in the house and are now pretending that we're white and we vote according to that. But we have such power in the media now that we have told the media, along with the whites, we both teamed up, us and the whites convinced the media rather to make a narrative. If you noticed right when Trump won, they were going fucking crazy with this, where they were blaming black men for Trump winning and they were blaming Latino men for this. So immediately on social media, black people and Latino people arguing left and right, like tearing each other apart. And I'm just gonna let y'all know right now, these whites and Asians planned that shit. Because the real reason why Trump is in office by quantity and relative shift is the whites and the Asians. But who's getting the blame for all of this shit? The Latino men and the black men.
And that's crazy because black men still was like 75%. Democrat.
Yeah, it was 16% that voted red. Like that's so small. And black people vote the least out of all the demographics. So from a quantity standpoint, it's not even that fucking many votes to begin with.
A lot to do with that has to do with, one, is what you said before, Johnny, about the Asians and like I said, all Asians coming to America and kind of being able to coast through any of the racial strife that makes made the black people and the Mexicans and the Italians and the Irish have to have an identity for themselves in America and kind of buy into the identity politics side of America. You guys never had a reason to build that for yourself in America, which is, I say that it sounds like a bad thing, but it's really not. It makes it so you're in a position now where you don't have a reason to give a fuck about any of the social issues.
Yeah, just economics, really.
It's just economics.
Yeah.
You talk to any Indian or Chinese, and like, economics, dog. I don't give a fuck about any of this social shit, and you don't have to, because they're not part of this identity politics culture, because they never had a reason to. Which is, honestly, I envy that. But because, especially black more than anybody, because of our country's history with black people, we're so much of a center topic in the identity politics, and identity politics is used as a tool so much that we can't help but to be inserted into every single conversation, so we kind of have to care, which sucks. And say with the gays and Mexicans and anybody that's part of the identity politics umbrella. But you guys have done that shit fucking, I don't know if it's you guys doing it right or just happening to come into at the best time and the best situation to fly under that radar, but that's a good place to be.
Yeah, my belief is the latter, in my opinion. And maybe I'm just saying this out of like guilt of seeing what my own race is doing. And by the way, Middle Eastern people, I'm talking about you motherfuckers too. Get in here, bro. Like it's you. Like it's us. It's the Indians. It's the fucking Koreans. It's the Middle Eastern. It's us, bro. Like that. It's
UAE.
Us. Yeah. So there's this middle tier of races for sure. The UAE, Nate. For sure. Oh my God. We are in this gray area where we understand your race politics, and this will always be a white versus black. Like this country really got founded on just this white versus black racial dynamic. Whenever Americans talk about race, I'm blessed to have had parents that have come from another country, so I get to listen to how other people view America as well as my parents, and then also kind of see the contrast when I go to India, right, versus being here. And we all understand that when y'all talk about race, it's a very easy conversation to control and manipulate, because it's always around the black and white dynamic. Like, it's very difficult for Americans to grasp other races in terms of the conversation of race in America. So this subsection of other races that exist, right, that are not part of this disenfranchised group that you were talking about, Nate, black people, Latinos, gay people, trans people, all that, we know we're not a part, and we know that this dynamic exists. So we are able to allow y'all to punch each other in the face, and we just kind of cruise in the back of the room and just get to where we got to get to, because y'all so busy fighting each other.
Yeah.
And so we'll switch sides, bro. Like it's like, you know, Dave Chappelle had this skit very famously where he's like, I did advertisements, commercials for Coca-Cola and Pepsi. If you ask me who tastes better, I'm gonna just tell you who paid me more recently.
Yeah.
So,
Verizon man, it's the Verizon man shit.
yeah, right. So if I just got paid by Pepsi, I'm gonna say Pepsi tastes good. If I just got paid by Coke, I'm gonna say Coke tastes good.
It's a fucking mess. And to what you said earlier too, I want to be clear, I don't blame the whole Asian community here at all for that. All that shows me is you guys have an understanding of where the fuck you're at. This is America, dog. You gotta get in where you fit in, and yeah, you gotta play that game, and they are. Well, do what helps your community. And what helps your community is staying out of that bullshit, Ashley.
Like, do y'all want to talk about what is for sure coming next? Because I think so many people have been obsessed about what just happened. Actually, look forward and be objective. Like, there are some potential good things that could be coming out of these next 4 years. Like, I wanted to ask you guys, like, what are your thoughts about Trump's unconventional but very knowledgeable approach to his second term right now? I'm talking like RFK doing the health stuff. I'm talking about Elon creating this agency, right, with Vivek Ramaswamy, like the government efficiency agency, right, where they're saying, we actually give a shit about the debt and the deficit, right, an issue both of y'all know I complain about every single fucking time.
Yeah.
When we talk about politics, to me, it's the most important thing. We're on a debt spiral right now. We take more of our taxpayer money to pay down our own interests, our own government interests, than we do the Department of Defense now.
It's insane. I work for it.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you get, bro.
Yes. Oh yeah, it's a mess.
The fact that we're spending more money now on our interest in the Department of Defense shows us how fucked we are, right? So something's gotta give. I really feel like The Trump administration, Elon and JD Vance, who is funded by Peter Thiel. If you don't know who Peter Thiel is, you guys should look him up. Literally one of the biggest players in Silicon Valley ever, like PayPal mafia guy. They have not silently on the campaign, like, hey, we're willing to risk a recession for this shit. Like, we don't give a fuck. We feel like we have so much aura. We feel like we can explain this in a way where we're willing to force a recession to make sure that we get the long term of the future of this country together. And so I have to acknowledge there's a lot of dumbass people who voted for Trump who's like, the second he gets in, things are immediately going to get better. And they have no idea what tariffs are, for example. They have no idea how like the unemployment statistics are going to be tethered to the amount of people that get fired from the government. Like, people aren't thinking about these downstream effects. So I want to take this time to like kind of talk about these things, the good and the bad. You know, starting off, massive unemployment will probably happen. And I'm going to be honest with you. To me, this is the scariest part, and nobody talks about this, and it bothers me. Like, if you work at the DMV, like, that means you were so shitty of a person that you probably couldn't have gotten a job anywhere else. Like, I'm sorry. Like, can we just like...
I work closely with the government. They are all like that. The entire from the ground up. And it's because of the same, it goes back to what you were saying before about the difference between a career politician running this and an actual businessman running this is the entirety of the government, not even just the head. The entirety of the government doesn't work to incentivize growth in the smallest aspect, because it all comes down to every single person in the government, their salaries and all their pay is not tied to their success at all, at every single level. And that affects the entirety of the attitude around every single government worker, and really at every level. It's such a complete difference.
Absolutely, man.
Try to point when they get to the top, they don't even know how to grow, let alone actually want to.
Bingo. Nonetheless, actually want to, right? You have a government that does not incentivize productivity
at all.
Not only does the public sector not raise wages properly relative to the private sector, okay, at all. If you look at wage growth in the public sector versus the private sector for the same amount of jobs, we're talking about like tens of percentage points within a couple of years of a difference, right? Like, you take a decade, it's a 20% gap. Only is there not a promotion cycle for that. I'll put this in a nice way, right? The government does a great job financially engineering employment numbers by creating government jobs as a safety net to get people hired so we don't have high unemployment. So when you end up firing them, though, here's the consequence, and nobody has talked about this on the media, and I love that I get to talk about this now. When you fire the most unhireable people, the probability that they stay unemployed or do not go back into the free market and get a job is much higher than firing the same group of people in the private sector. What I'm saying is the consequences will not only be this huge rise in unemployment in a very quick amount of time because of the government sector that needs to get cut down. These people will have the hardest time finding jobs outside of the government, because they've lived so long in an environment that does not incentivize productivity that they have to reteach themselves the habit of being productive. And then secondly, they have to make a transition potentially into a new industry, into a private sector that demands more from them. And then more importantly, they're competing against new people that are coming in for that job that have a ton of private sector experience or do have a great college degree that maybe some of these government workers don't necessarily have.
Yeah.
My point is, what the fuck do we do with these people, right? Like, Elon's coming in as an entrepreneur. We all know Trump is beholden to Putin and Elon. We all know that, right? So Elon's going to run a shadow government, and I am okay with some parts of that, but we need to be transparent about how this shit is going to work. He's going to Twitter this. He's going to run through and be like, okay, I really only see 15% of the people that I need to keep this thing afloat. I will fire 85%. Because he did that on Twitter. And lo and behold, people gave him all this shit. Twitter still works perfectly fine. From an actual like software engineer functionality standpoint, he fired like so many fucking people. This thing works fine, right? And everybody said this, Twitter was going to be hard. So he wants to do that for the government, right? And I could see us saving a lot of fucking money from that, and that will actually make a dent in the deficit. But we also have to think about these consequences.
I think that's the benefit of a second campaign as opposed to the first, where unemployment numbers generally matter a lot more to people who need to go for re-election. Whereas like the presidency in general and running the country is a lose-lose situation by far. You're gonna have to take your L's in a lot of places. And if unemployment is an L that this administration is willing to take to cut the debt deficit, Trump might be all right with that. He doesn't have to go for re-election. His unemployment numbers don't really necessarily matter to him.
Yeah.
If his overall point is, all right, make this government more efficient, whatever the fuck that means. If that means a lot more people are at home not getting a paycheck, so sucks to be you. We gotta move this shit.
It's time to fucking figure it out. This government can't go bankrupt.
Yeah, you gotta take your L somewhere.
American economics allows you to financially engineer statistics that aren't true. That's why the American voter keeps telling us that the economy is not fucking good, despite all these GDP and other bullshit statistics that you put on those news screens, right? You can keep fucking feeding us whatever you want, bro. You can show us as many graphs as you want. The American voter said the economy is not doing well. My food prices are fucking high. I cannot afford a fucking house. The rent prices are getting crazy. It's that simple. But then because the people who caused the problem don't want to put the blames on themselves, they'd rather use the media to create narratives to deflect, right? Make it a minority's problem. Say Trump is a fascist, that's gonna catch more headlines than simply saying, we're gonna reroute this funding to creating a bunch of highway jobs. Like, what was that one fucking highway from Indianapolis to Terre Haute that we'd always have to drive through where they never stopped doing construction?
70?
Yes, the I-70 is the perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They've been funded 10 times over to fix that highway. Let me tell you that right now. People, the common American, the common Indianan, I don't know what the fuck the term is for an Indiana person. I'm just going to call them that. Like, they will simply do a
Hoosier.
Yeah, a Hoosier. Thank you, Sterlz.
Oh, they said loser. I was supposed to say, damn.
Oh, no.
But yeah, man, like a typical Hoosier is going to be like, man, like the state just, we just fucking don't got the money for this shit. The reality is from the federal side, when a Democrat's in office, you know what time it is. They bazooka in money everywhere. And when a Democrat's in money, they going to identify a problem, bazooka a bunch of cash with it, and hope that the cash just solves the problem for them. They don't really look at how the money gets spent. They don't look at who is solving the problem. They just bazooka cash and are like, see, we cared to point it at the right direction, so that makes us the better politician.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100%.
That's a lot of the same complaints that people always had about the pharmaceutical world, and like the whole thing has grown to be inefficient, non-stop cash grab because there's more employment and more money and continued treatment rather than eradicating problems. That's like a common complaint on how dirty the pharmaceutical world can be.
Yeah, and I mean they are in a bunch of politicians' pockets. We already seen that, especially the DNC.
Oh, definitely. Bro, they asked me for money again to be like, hey, could you help us fund Kamala's recount? And I was like, no, she lost, bro. Like I said from before, like the DNC knows to hoe out for cash constantly, but they don't actually give a shit about creating a helpful feedback loop to do something effective with the money. Kamala fundraised Trump 3 times over. She joined the election in August. So that should show you how much money she raised in such a short amount of time. What did they do with the money?
Begging for money like that is kind of crazy when they were just earlier kind of bragging about how much money she raised as soon as she announced that she was going to be taking over Biden's candidacy.
Yeah.
Like they bragged about the number of money that they got immediately.
Where do they go from here? Because it doesn't seem like they really are actually trying to learn the lesson of what the American people have told them, and instead, like, what do you expect to happen in the next? If you expect to happen in the next election, if you just keep doing the same shit?
I think that's a product of 2 different things. Just the fact that America is a capitalist society being run by a pretty much communist entity. It makes no fucking sense as far as incentivizing any long-term success.
I think it's going to get reevaluated, though, under the Trump administration, right? Like, I think the American voter voted Trump in to try to take a baseball bat to these ideas.
Yeah. Yo, stay tuned, people. We love you. I love you. Sterlz loves you. I know Jony loves you. Don't fucking drown yourself in the doom or gloom of your candidate not winning. At the end of the day, we're all fucking American, and we should have hope for the future, even if it's the nigga you don't like holding the wheel. You won't be holding it forever. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I think it is going to be okay, really. I mean, we might go through some shit in this process. Like, I'm not saying it's all going to be hunky-dory. There's going to be some dark times, but there's going to be some bright lights that come out of nowhere. And you also got to appreciate those moments, too. So we'll take the good and the bad, and no matter what, we'll be here for you.
Gotta be optimistic. At the end of the day, we all American.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man.
Don't let this shit make you not be proud to be a goddamn American.
Exactly.